Hi guys, what are we gonna do today? We're gonna make this cute vintage kitchen canister. Let's get started. First thing we're gonna need is you're going to need a tin. And I really like using these big popcorn tins only because we have so many of them after Christmas, and what do you do with them? So this is what we're gonna use, but you could use any size tin or container you would like. What I had done is, because it's like a shiny metal, just to give it a little grip, I put some of this Rust-Oleum clear durable top coat, and I just sprayed it on there and let it dry, and I am going to paint over that. Today I'm going to use my DIY cottage colors, and this one is the Haint Blue. So we're just going to paint this guy up, and I'm also going to paint the lid the same color. I'm going to let this coat dry and add one more coat to this. And I'm also going to paint the lid. The cottage colors are completely different than the DIY's clay-based paint. These are a one-step paint. It has a sealer, it is self-leveling. You put your first coat on, put your second coat on, and you are pretty much done. And with the clay-based paints, you put them on, you can rub them back, you can blend together just with water, and they work quite differently, and they do not have a top coat in them. So I'm gonna let this one dry also, then I'll do a second coat on these. So I'm gonna be putting my second coat on, and then we're gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna move on. So I am going to use this for a flower bin. And I know my lid will go over that, so I'm going to start underneath this ridge. And I'm just going to stamp the word flower on here. I'm using my typeset font and my permanent black ink. And these are IOD, but you probably have other fonts and other things that you may already have. So I'm going to use some wheat sprigs from my Fruitful Harvest stamp. And you can see I just kind of lined up my cow to see where he was going to go. I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to do a quick spray seal over this. So I'm going to use my Village Market. It's my new IOD mold. And it was really hard because I wanted to use all the animals, but I think I'm going to use the cow for this one. I'm adding just a tad bit of cornstarch in here. So I'm doing the cow, and I'm going to do a few pieces of the wheat. And I'm also going to use my IOD air dry clay. And if you could see, I wrap it and wrap it and wrap it because I do not want it to dry out. Okay, let's get this little guy out of here. Ooh-wee. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to use my Titebond Quick and Thick glue, and we are going to glue this onto our can. So this is my Titebond Quick and Thick wood glue, but it actually works amazing on this clay. It grabs quickly. I noticed before when I was using other glues, they worked. But I almost had to use masking tape to tape them in place so they didn't slide off of my piece while they were drying, and this grabs really tightly, so I don't need to worry about that. And I'm just using a little finer brush only because there is so many skinny little parts to her. I'm just gonna glue this on here, and then I'm gonna glue my 2 pieces of wheat. And really with a project like this, you could add as much or as little as you would like to decorate. I am just real gently adhering this down because I don't want the detail to come out. I mean, you can wait a minute or so after you've made the mold, so it gives it just a little bit of firmness. But if you wait too long, then it's really hard to put it onto your piece without cracking it if it dries too much. I'm gonna let this set on here just for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to paint these pieces. I'm gonna base coat my cow with sandy blonde, which is a light brown. And this is a DIY paint. So I finished painting the cow with base coat, and I'm gonna paint my wheat with some cake batter, which is a light yellow. I am gonna put a sealer over these pieces I just painted after they are all completely dry. And then we are going to do our next step. So my wheat and my cow, the base coat's dry, so I am just gonna real quickly seal it with my Minwax polyacrylic crystal clear sealer. I'm gonna let this dry. So my cow and my wheat are dry. I'm going to use my layered chocolate from DIY. This is when I feel it's really important to use this paint because I can wipe this off. Polyacrylic's dry, and I am just going to coat the top of this with this darker brown. I'm just gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna wipe it back. So this brown paint is dry, so I am just gonna wipe it all back and just keep some in there to give me some dimension in my mold. You know, you gotta remember too that your clay is still very, very soft. So I'm gonna do a quick spray seal just over these three pieces, and then we are gonna start putting our crackle medium on here. So I'm gonna be using my new Pentart, it's Fine Line Crackle Varnish. So this paint has a sealer in it, and it is completely dry, and that is one of the things you wanna make sure your product is completely dry before you move on. This is the first step, and it says component 1. So I'm just going to use this synthetic brush, and I want a nice coat on this. Now, if you're putting a transfer on here first or a decoupage paper, I would definitely seal whatever you're putting on here before you are putting this first part of the crackle on here, and then make sure that sealer is completely dry. Let this dry, and I am going to do the bottom of my can. Everything on here is dry. And I am just going to give this a nice, all of this, a nice coat. So I am going to coat this whole tin, and we're going to let this dry. So make sure you have another clean, dry brush. And once again, I'm using a synthetic. I find that works the best. And I'm using part 2 of the crackle. And I am going to try not to do a million brush strokes. Try to get it on. You do not want your brush to get tacky into it. And if it feels like it's starting to get tacky, just add more on your brush before you slide it over your piece. So you want to coat everything that's on your tin, the clay and the tin. And I'm working kind of quickly here. So when I'm done covering the actual tin, I'm going to do the same process over the lid. So after you've covered it all, You're just going to let this set and dry. As it dries, you're going to start seeing the crackle on here. So you can just kind of watch it, but you need to let it completely dry before you start doing anything else with it. So I'm gonna go let this dry and then we'll continue on. So this is completely dry. So it's really hard to see the cracks maybe in the camera. I can see them. As it started to dry, it was cracking throughout. In a moment, you're going to be able to see what I'm seeing when I use the dark wax over this. So what I'm doing first is I am putting a light coat of a clear wax on, and then I'm going to use a dark wax. You could add a dark and decrepit dust to this to fill in, but I'm going to use the dark wax. And you want to make sure you are not using any sort of a water-based sealer on this. And the reason I'm really putting the clear on is because then when I put the dark in, the dark is not going to darken this so much that I can rub it back with the clear underneath of it. But I can leave it in the dark cracks that I've got. And I'm going to be wiping it back when I'm done. So you still need to be kind of careful with your clay because it's not completely hardened yet. You can see as I'm rubbing this where the actual cracks are, this dark wax is filling in. So if you're ever using the dark and decrepit dust, you'd really be mixing it with your clear wax and just pushing it in to those fun little openings that the second part of the compound has made in this. Now I can see a few cracks in the cow, but not as much as on the can. And I didn't coat this quite as thickly as I did on the can, on the cow, but you can see there are a few cracks coming through him. So what I'm doing is I'm wiping back all the excess dark that I do not want on this can, but I'm letting it fill in to the cracks that we've created. So I'm just going to continue wiping this back until I get the look I like. And I'm going to do the exact same process with my lid, and then we will do our last seal on this. So I'm done wiping back what I wanted to wipe back on this, and so I am going to put my Rust-Oleum spray sealer on this. Again, once again, you do not want to put a water-based sealer over the top of this. So I'm going to put, and even though I put wax on it, I've wiped it back as much as I can. I am going to use my spray sealer on this. I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll be done. So this is the lid. I did the same thing. All I did is I added a wooden ball. It's flat at the bottom, and I drilled a little hole and put a screw in it to hold it nice and tight. And now we're going to put it on our can. You know, and you could try any sort of a knob or even a handle to put on your lid. It just adds a little more interest to your piece. I hope you guys had fun with this. I thought this was just a cool idea to upcycle those 50 popcorn tins we always get at Christmas. Well, at least we do. That's a tradition. So this is a great way to use these up. And I love that new Pentart fine line crackle. I find that I've been using it on a few other things, and it really gives you this very cool porcelain look. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, but whatever you do, have fun.